right, everybody. In theory, we have gone live over here on Patreon. Just waiting for some of you guys to tune in with me and give me your thoughts, your questions, and guide me as to where you want this little broadcast to go today. It's been a fun week. My wife and kids were out of town, so played Bachelor for for the week. And with that time, I watched the 3 Purge movies and 4 Quentin Tarantino movies, finished Luke Cage Season 2. So tried to be productive as I could this week to see what would happen. And, well, here we are a week later. House isn't burned down. Got some videos made. And I've done some prep work on some future videos that hopefully will be simply stunning. But, yeah, that's my quick catch-up on the week. Going back to the gym, went one time last week. Didn't go every day. I've got a dog that's kind of sick at home that makes it a little bit difficult for me to leave at 6 in the morning to go to the gym to meet up with my buddies. But I'm hoping in the next 3 months to gain 15 pounds, a nice solid mass. So, yeah, just I'm like gone to the gym in a while. I have a job that keeps me physically active. So the idea of going that extra mile to like how muscular, how big can I get, just seems kind of fun to me because it's not something I've done, not been able to do, yeah, my you get older and your body changes and metabolism slows down. So when I was younger, my metabolism burned so fast that I couldn't really get big, and then it slowed down just enough that it's like, hey, I wonder how muscular I can get, and do I have like the perfect mix of slow burning, fast burning metabolism to become an action star. So we'll see what happens. But, all right. Oh, joining in the comment section, BWise asks, do you watch NCIS? No, I do not watch NCIS. I've seen, I think, 1 episode. It's one of my mom's shows that she watches all the time. So sometimes she, like, casually references, oh, it's like this character on NCIS. And, Mom, I don't watch that show. I've watched 1 episode, and it was with you. And I told you, hey, Mom, this is the first time I've ever watched this show. But, yeah, I haven't watched it in no particular reason. It's not like I'm avoiding it. I just don't need one more weekly procedural to add to my list. I did watch along with her Law & Order SVU up until this last season, and I got to a point in time where I was just, I'm done. Their politics and worldview of the writers was just so engulfing. The episodes, the plot lines, the dialogue, the characters, that it just wasn't a show for me anymore, because it just was so I don't know, use like a lot of right now they talk about people wanting diversity on TV shows, and when they say that they're referring to men and women in the writers' room in the cast. We want people of different ethnicities in the writers' room, but then what they don't have is they don't have diversity of thought. And I think all of those are good things to have. The benefit of having diversity of people, background, gender, all that fun stuff is that you have diversity of thought. Like, that's one of the reasons that you want to have diversity. And so if you actively say we only have people that have this one worldview, then you don't fully have diversity. And then you watching it, Law & Order SVU, it just felt like a room full of people that are all from New York or LA, that just don't have any contact with the rest of the country, writing stories about people that have their same worldview, and so it alienated me pretty quickly. It was pretty frustrating. Oh, we got lots of questions coming in, so I went on a little rant there because I didn't realize we had more people coming in. Rhino Tool says, hey there, thank you for watching my most recent review, Sean. I appreciate it. No problem, man. It's tough for me. I used to, every single Saturday, I would spend a couple hours and I would watch through. Try and watch at least one video of every other channel I'm subscribed to, but just keeping up with just the comments on my videos eating my time. So actually, finally this week, because my wife and kids were out of town, was able to sit down and like, I'm going to catch up. I want to like watch people's stuff, and I want to see where they're coming from on some of these things and have some conversations with them. So finally able to catch up a little bit. And I didn't even get through all of them. I got through as many as I could. But yeah, I really try to watch my subscriptions on there when I can. Rhino Tool says, any big plans for the 4th of July weekend? I think that we're going to my wife's lake house for the 4th of July. I have the day off from work, which is pretty exciting. So I think, was that Tuesday night? We're going to drive out to her family lake house that's about an hour away from where we're at, and it's not like a big lake. It's not. It actually, I don't know. I can't describe it in a way. I'll probably do a vlog on my second channel, a vlog about what the day looks like for me. And so I think that's what we're doing. I might be making this whole thing up, and I've just like created in my mind what I hope that we do, because they have jet skis out there. There'll be fireworks at nighttime. Sometimes her brother brings a shotgun to start shooting things out in the lawn. Texas type thing. So one time we went kayaking. We were going down the kind of feels more like a river than a lake. I was going down and I just heard like people shooting guns over us. Texas. Rich Review says, howdy, recently watched your sobriety video. Congratulations. I suffer from crippling social anxiety. My videos are a way to counteract this. Yeah, I actually, to some extent, that's somewhat what my channel is too. It's not, I don't have crippling social anxiety, but I'm certainly shy, and I certainly have tendencies towards, as the video talked about, drinking. And the channel was a way to send my energy in a direction. And likewise, I'm very shy in real life and introverted. So I'm not someone that tends to like drive conversations and things like that. And so I've, for about 15 years now, very commonly found a lot more community and people to talk about things with online as opposed to in real life. So starting my channel to find people to talk to about movies, that's a element of my introversion. It's the way I interact with people, is finding common interest. And where do you find people with common interest in the 21st century? You do it online. And so that's kind of what I do, and that's to why I was watching, followed a bunch of you guys on the internet and watch your reviews and things like that, because it's a way for me to be social with people and interact with people that doesn't involve me having to talk with them in person. Be wise, Ryan, you're late on ROF. I don't know what we're referring to on that one. Rich Reviews, I looked up your Unsolved Mysteries thing on a fandom site. Yep, you can read about my family on Unsolved Mysteries out there. Yeah, it's just a fun little Unsolved Mysteries episode that came out 27 years ago. It was like 1990s. So yeah, 28 years ago. My family was on Unsolved Mysteries, and there's a murderer in my family probably. Yay! I've got murderer DNA. Fun times. It's always interesting to learn about your family and discover that you've got a killer in the mix. All right, my browser is being funky, man. I thought for a second I didn't have any more questions, but I am wrong about that. Rotten or Fresh is what he was referring to. Okay. Be wise. Okay, you guys are just talking with each other. Rich Reviews. Went to the Alamo on Friday and saw the movie Twister. Wow, was it idiotic? Have you never seen Twister before? Yeah, that's classic 90s disaster movie. In that era when, Independence Day's blowing up Capitol buildings, and then you do Twister, and you've got tornadoes just tearing up cities while people are chasing them down, all with a fun soundtrack and over-the-top ridiculous characters. That's the 90s. That's what I remember blockbusters being back when I was in grade school. So I was there, when that one happened. Also, you've got that Van Halen song, Human Beings, which was like their last song with Sammy Hagar before he quit the band, and there's like a whole story about them trying to create the song for the Twister soundtrack, and that being one of the final straws with Sammy quitting the band. So, but yeah, Alamo Drafthouse, fun movie theater. They show things like that, and they probably also had some shenanigans that went along with the showing of the movie as well. Rhino Tool says, have you seen Won't You Be My Neighbor? I feel like I'm the only one who hasn't yet seen it, and it's not in my area. I haven't seen it yet. I was, so earlier last week when obviously my wife was out of town, so I had more freedom to go to the movies. When I first looked into it, prior to Friday, it was only showing kind of across town. And since I was already going to a press screening across town, and I didn't want to go into the movies to just kind of eat up all of my free time at night times. So I did end up going. And then Friday and Saturday, it opened in a theater closer to where I was at. But then I had the thought, okay, it's closer to my house. That means I can get my wife to go see it. I know my wife wants to see this, so it'll probably be a date night in the next couple weeks if it stays at this theater that's closer by to where we're at. So I just need to lock her in to go see it with me. So that's I haven't. It's on my when I most anticipated the summer list, and it's one my wife would go see with me. So hopefully I'll see it pretty soon, and I'm only hearing amazing things about it, as I'm sure you are too. Rich Review says, I've seen Won't You Be My Neighbor. For me, it's a contender for Best Film of the Year. That seems to be what everyone's saying, that it's amazing. So I'm pumped. And just especially, I imagine this ties into why so many people love it right now and have such strong positive feelings towards it. But just with how divisive, how toxic so much of what's going on in popular culture, in particular with the news cycle and the different factions competing and just screaming about how the other side's to blame for everything. Just a lot of toxicity. Even Star Wars fandom is toxic right now. MCU fandom's not too toxic. It's pretty good. But just so much negativity, and then you've got a movie about something that's a common shared nostalgia to so many of our childhood that's like heartwarming, uplifting, positive. It's like the answer to all of the negativity that's going on in so much of the rest of society. So it just seems like the right movie at the right time, and it's good. Rich Review says, would you rather see a live-action version of Berenstain Bears or Magic School Bus? I don't really remember Berenstain Bears. Yes, I don't have a strong thought on whether that would be good or not. Magic School Bus, I don't know if you're talking about like a live-action TV show, that would be so CGI, so special effectsy to try and do these little lesson type things that I don't think that would work. Or if you're talking about a movie where they would make a budget, I don't know how that works with the concept of the TV show, which is, hey, let's teach kids things by sending them on a magic school bus. And so there's a wacky adventure side of kids on a bus that takes them places and so they can see things. I don't think that doesn't translate to a movie because that's not what it's trying to be. It's trying to educate. It's edutainment. It's educational entertainment for children. And wouldn't work as a TV show in that form because for budget reasons and just the nature of like, hey, let's work on the human body. Now here's what a heart actually looks like. I mean, I don't know if the kids want to actually see that, things like that, but it works as a cartoon. So I guess I'll go Berenstain Bears on that one. When I went to go see Twister, it was a movie party complete with glow sticks. That sounds right. That's an Alamo Drafthouse. Let's do that movie that came out 20 years ago, Twister. Let's just show it for it. And they'll have items on the menu. If you guys don't know what Alamo Drafthouse is, it's a movie theater that's for adults. They serve beer. They take orders at your table in front of you and bring you food throughout the movie. And so you can order a pizza at your seat, a full sandwich, and your waiter comes and brings you stuff. And so for movies like Twister, they'll have specialty menu items for Twister. And so if in the movie, this isn't the case with this movie, but they go to some specific restaurant and Bill Paxton just happens to order a hoagie or something like that, and it's like this major plot point in the movie that he ate this hoagie. On the menu, when they show Twister, they will sell their version of that hoagie to you. When we went to go see Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, they had specialty cups printed, but based off Mondo artists, the people who do those Mondo posters, design cups for them. So if you go see Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, while it's running first run at Alamo Drafthouse, you can get a Mondo cup designed for the movie. And so they do fun stuff like that, glow stick parties. When they show the room, there's this whole tradition to what you do with that. They'll do sing-alongs for, like when Greatest Showman, they did sing-alongs for months, sing along with the movie. So all sorts of fun stuff kind of go along with it. Rich Reviews, when was the last time you cared about two characters getting together, regardless it being TV or television? Cared about two characters getting together on a TV show. What TV shows am I watching right now? I watch so many things right now. I'm just confused as to when things happened and which one was what. I don't have anything that's coming to mind. I don't have a strong thought on that one at the moment. I can't think of anything that coupled on the current shows that I'm watching that I wanted to get together right now, because I'm so backlogged on, or I'm so kind of there's so many shows I've been watching for several years that are still running. I'm not jumping in on a ton of new shows, and so for that reason, there's not some of those relationships that they established earlier. I'm like, I can't wait till they get together. I don't have any of those that are kind of going on right now that I can think of. Maybe there's something obvious that I'm forgetting about. Ryan O'Toole, I saw you bought all the Purge movies. So did I. That ranking of all of them with the new one coming out should be interesting. Yeah, so I didn't get election year because I didn't have election year or election day, whatever the title of the third one was. I didn't pick that one up, but I picked the other two up, and then I rented the third one, so I watched all of them in preparation for a ranking. So it should be interesting. It'll be interesting based off what they do with this new one. If this new one just feels kind of like a rehash of the second and third films, which is to say we're out in the purge with these heavy political undertones about what they're just doing this to kill the poor people, it's the rich people. If it's just retreading too much on that similar ground, it might be a little bit boring. But if they find a way, and this one's actually really good, or at least for the series really good, then the ranking could get pretty interesting for me. I haven't even amongst the three that I've seen, I'm still debating what my bottom two are. Like, I definitely know what the best one is, and the bottom two, because they're so different. That's why I'm not quite sure. And that's where it could be if you throw the third one in, and whether it makes the top one interesting could be. Anyway, that's where I'm fascinated by this one, where it could go. Rich reviews. With regards to Designated Survivor, I actually liked the thriller aspects rather than the West Wing material. I'd be the opposite. I liked the West Wing stuff a lot more because they couldn't really explore because Kiefer Sutherland's not the star of the thriller stuff. We're not really digging into it too deep, and so it just felt like superficial spy stuff. And so I didn't care for that. So the politics of how do you make decisions? How would a president that nobody wanted, nobody elected to be president, trying to govern in a broken nation that has faced devastating consequences? That's interesting to me. Not, the West Wing, but not when things are great. The West Wing when things are really bad. That's more interesting to me than conspiracy theory stuff and spy stuff that's superficial. Someone just shows up and kills someone, and so we'll have a couple scenes exploring that. Didn't really work for me. And then I really didn't like it that the character that they killed off in the middle of the second season and how that shifted the dynamics of the show. That seemed like something they should have waited longer to do, or do that as a season finale rather than mid-season killing off a character that important to the show. That was a very weird thing to do in my mind. Rich reviews. What TV shows are you currently watching? Westworld, Arrow, The Flash, Star Trek Discovery. What days of the week? Was watching Designated Survivor. This Is Us. American Ninja Warrior with my kids. Those are the ones that kind of come to mind. Rich reviews. Are you planning to watch the Purge TV series? I'll give it a shot. I'll see it. What kind of depends on what their concept for the show is, and if it's good. It's not like something I'd lock in to watch or anything like that, but it's something that I'm curious about just because it could potentially be something to talk about on my channel. And if they do a Purge TV series that's an anthology series and told in real time, so each season is a different Purge, or each season could be the same Purge, but just told different people at different places. And, the Purge is 12 hours. And so then you find a way so that it's 13 episodes, 14, so that it maps out. So each episode is an hour of that Purge. That sounds interesting to me. And you can tell very different types of stories, and you can have them intermingle with each other throughout the seasons and things. There's a lot of interesting stuff you could do with a Purge TV show, with just the concept of the Purge, as well as the amount of time the Purge takes. Works really nicely for the modern ways that people kind of watch TV. Would you want to see a reboot to American Tail or Land Before Time? Animated films, I just don't necessarily see the point in rebooting them or remaking them. That it's especially ones that are about, one's a period piece, one's about, both are period pieces. One's about dinosaurs and one's about immigration in the 19th century. I don't know that I don't know that either one lends themselves to being remade. Like, I don't know what you add to them by doing so. So I wouldn't be for either one really being remade because they're animated. I just don't get what you'd be going for. Ryan Rich Review says, thoughts on Ryan Gosling playing Neil Armstrong. He's a great actor. Was it Damien Chazelle's doing the movie? So, I mean, all of it sounds great. I mean, it's the same sort of movie that I'm sure will be a very cool movie that will get a bunch of Oscar nominations. And I don't have, like, specific thoughts on Ryan Gosling specifically playing Neil Armstrong. I don't have that. It's just one of those ones of, like, yeah, he's the type of actor that would get a role like that would get people. It works well for marketing. He's a talented guy. They've worked together before, so all of that stuff makes sense. So I don't have strong thoughts other than good actor, good role, makes sense. Rich Reviews, talking to you is the highlight of my week. Oh, that's awesome, man. I appreciate it, and I appreciate that you obviously join in on here, support the channel, and that there's people to talk movies with. And talk movies, TV shows, weird random stuff. Yeah, that's why I do this. As I was talking to, so I met Tyler Tompkins this past week in real life. So fellow reviewer guy, Tyler Tompkins. He moved about an hour that way from where I live. He was in Louisiana, but his family's from Central Texas, and so then he ended up at a military base, or I guess the city of a military base or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but 60 miles down the road or something like that. And so then we went to go see Sicario 2 at the press screening, and I was able to bring a guest, so I was like, hey, man, this is opportunity. We can. So I met him, and in talking with him, one of the commonalities is that we're both kind of like, yeah, one of the reasons we wanted to start a channel was just it's tough to find people that want to talk about movies to the level that I want to talk about movies, as often or as deep or have the knowledge base. It's tough to, like when you... Sorry if I'm itching my nose. You guys probably know this. My nose starts itching when I talk for too long. But it's tough to find people that have seen enough movies, care about enough movies, think about them objectively, have the vocabulary to articulate their thoughts on them in real life. Because you can find someone that, finding someone that wants to talk about Marvel movies is pretty easy. But they talk about it. Marvel movies are all they go to see in the theater. Like, they barely go see any movies, so all they have are, movies with these characters right here that they see. And that's a very different conversation than someone that sees 50 movies in a year, 100 movies in a year, and they watch Marvel movies in that context. The more movies you see, it gives you a better idea of what a good movie is and a bad movie is. So people that see 10 movies per year, what they say is the best movies, probably not the best movie, maybe the most broad appeal blockbuster movie of the year. And what they say is the worst movie really is more like the most disappointing movie. It's a movie that they went to go see because they're so excited about the previous movie in the franchise, or because they love Transformers things, and they go see this Transformers movie and it's this Michael Bay nonsense. But there's worse things that actually were made. They would just never go see the movie. So having you guys to talk with on here that you actually go see a bunch of movies, TV shows, have that language vocabulary, it's a lot of fun to, and people that obsess about it, whether you have a channel or you're just a person that wants to watch channels like mine, you care on a different level. So yeah, it's nice to be able to actually interact with you, and on a deeper level also than what you can do in comment sections, because comment sections don't have the nuance that me being able to speak does. Rich Reviews, what podcasts do you listen to? Which ones have I been listening to recently? Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History. Adam Grant has one that I've been listening to. I used to listen to Script Notes a good bit. Listen to some political ones that I don't want to go into. Other podcast ones. What are the ones I've been listening? I haven't been listening to as many podcasts recently, so I've been listening to audiobooks a lot. I used to listen to John Cambia's podcast and the Collider podcast, but I barely listened to those ones at all. I haven't listened to I haven't watched an episode or listened to an episode of Collider Movie Talk this entire year. for many reasons. Some of them just I don't have time, and some of it because the quality's dropped a lot in my mind. So yeah, a lot of those ones that are just kind of on sociology, how people work, think, things like that. I listen to a lot of stuff like that. Actually, I guess I can look at my phone. It's right here in front of me. What podcasts have I been listening to? Did I miss any obvious ones? Video Creators Podcast from Tim Schmoyer. That's one. Creative Slide from John Acuff. He hasn't done too many episodes just yet, but so he's a writer, does kind of like books on productivity, finishing things like that. So he started a podcast a few months back, but he hasn't kept with it week to week, unfortunately. And he sometimes he interviews people, and sometimes he puts ideas out there. I like the ones where he puts his ideas out there a lot more than the ones where he interviews people, because I don't know, he hasn't quite figured out the exact flavor of all of his stuff yet. So yeah, those are the ones that I come to mind. Richard says, "I would actually love to meet you." Oh, hopefully I would be. Hopefully it would be a good use of your time. I have to actually try sometimes to be. I have to. If I think I'm going to meet people that have an expectation of what I'm like when they meet me, I have to like psych myself into it. Of like, all right, you have to work to have the personality that I have on video, and make sure I'm not just talking about myself and things like that. Like I felt like I kept talking about myself when I was talking with Tyler, because he's good at asking questions, and when someone asks me a question, I can talk. That's what we're doing right now. I can just keep talking. I kept having to pause, like, "Hey man, well, what are you up to? You just graduated from college. What are you?" And I had to try and channel it back, because he's so much better at just naturally asking questions than I am. I'm not very good at just coming up with questions. I have to think about. Like, it's not that I'm not curious. I'm just not great at coming up with them. So I get nervous about some things like that. And like sometimes when I've met people from internet world that they like, I didn't think you liked me for a while there. But it's like, no, it's not that. It's I'm just not loud, energetic, hand waving in person. Rich Reviews. What is the TV show that everyone has talked about that you still haven't seen? I've only seen two seasons of Game of Thrones. And I've only seen 2 seasons of Walking Dead. Those are by far the two that would come to mind. You could throw in Handmaid's Tale or some things like that, but Walking Dead and Game of Thrones are the ones where it would be beneficial to me. Like for my channel, I would probably get some big hit videos if I watched Game of Thrones and Walking Dead. Those would be hit videos ranking the seasons and things like that, but I'm just not caught up on them. Thoughts on bringing the TV show The Nanny back? I don't know if I've ever seen a full episode of The Nanny, so I don't have any thoughts on it. I think this idea of bringing back 90s sitcoms in the 21st century is stupid, generally speaking. Just because their nostalgia returns is what they are. They're nostalgia things of like, remember when you were younger? Remember when you were growing up? Remember when you had your kids still in the home? Here's the show again. And that's not a good basis for making a TV show or bringing a TV show back. And comedy is very tied to periods of time. And so a lot of times when you show a comedy to a teenager like if I show a 90s comedy to a teenager today, they're like, this is outdated, this isn't funny, this is weird, and like all sorts, they critical of it, like, what, you don't think my movie's funny? Because comedy changes very quickly. That's why that most comedic actors transition to dramatic acting at a certain point in time. You don't have a lot of comedic actors that stay front and center as just comedic actors for 30 years. Like, I don't know if you can think of people like, think of these different actors that were major comedic actors of different time periods, and their career changed as time passed. Or they went from making adult comedies that made tons of money to making family comedies where they're getting hit in the balls and dogs are peeing on their leg and stuff like that. So things like that. Bringing The Nanny back, I just think, that's not what this show wouldn't be greenlit today in this style if it wasn't a nostalgia show. So in which case I think that it's probably not the best idea to bring it back. Rich Review says, fell behind on movie talk for about 2 years, then episode binged, got within 9 months before I quit. Yeah, I don't ever binge watch old ones simply because news is so set to a time period. Like hearing news from listening to an episode from 2 years ago, is they're like, hey, we're gonna do Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Colin Trevorrow's not coming back, hey, they're finally gonna do Incredibles 2. Like listening to the news about that from 2 years ago is wouldn't be the best use of time. But you get, like, I would see myself potentially start watching again. But the panel that they have, some of the people they have on there, I am not a fan of at all. Just some of the criteria, the way they've decided things, the way they've interacted with fans. They've had some people that are on there that are very questionable people that have like publicly attacked people and then been vindictive towards people that called them out on attacking people. Like I'm very confused at what they're doing, and their attitude towards the fans. Everything about it has really rubbed me the wrong way for this entire year, basically. Felicia says, hi, Sean. It's great that you do this for your patrons. Talking about disappointments in film, have you seen A Wrinkle in Time? Really didn't work for me. Most people call me V, so we'll go with B, by the way. That'll make it easier. I haven't seen A Wrinkle in Time. It's actually whole story behind it ties into everything you said, too. So I read the book growing up a long time ago, so I don't really remember it all that well. I just stopped, and when I started watching the trailers, I actually couldn't piece it together with the story from my childhood, and so I had to think about it like, oh, okay, now I remember what it was. And my sister loves all the books, and that's why I read it, because my sister had read all of them. And my wife's cousin was actually supposed to come to town right after when it came out, and we were going to go watch it, the three of us, and it just didn't happen. That opening weekend, she was out of town, or had something else come up, so she didn't come out and watch it. And then reviews were bad. They were not good. The buzz was not good. And it wasn't just that the reviews weren't good. The types of things they were saying was the disheartening type of thing of like, this isn't true to the book. The sorts of things that they were pulling out from it, that they're changing about it, was discouraging. And so I just ended up passing on it. And it's one that I wouldn't have naturally rushed out to go see myself, just because I'm not the target audience for it. And then hearing that it was a disappointment and not something that lived up to the book kind of amplified I don't need to see this one. So whenever my wife is interested in watching it, or my sister's like, hey, come on over, watch the movie, maybe I will. But I don't think either one of them are going to do that. So I don't know if I'll ever see it. Rich Reviews. One of my ultimate goals is that I would never have to do a worst of the year list. Yeah, I don't. So I did a worst of the year list last year, and I thought I'd seen enough movies that I could actually do that. This one year, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I might, because even like if I look, I keep an ongoing ranking of all the movies that I've seen throughout the year and what scores I gave it, and I change them around. Like I don't get stuck in on what score my ranking isn't based off the score. That's just a tool for me to decide. But so I've got this ranking of every movie that I've seen this year. And I'm watching a lot less movies than last year, but it's still 35 movies or something. 35 new releases this year. So by the end of the year, it'll be about 70 new releases that I've seen this year, probably. And thus far, I haven't seen enough bad movies to make a worst of the year list. I haven't seen the garbage. And some of that's, I'm not going to go see 50 Shades Freed. I'm not going to do that for moral reasons, even if it might get me a funny video ranting about how bad it is. I'm not going to go watch Show Dogs by myself, like me sitting in a theater as a grown man in my 30s with a bunch of kids around me like, hey, kid. I'm not going to do that. And then I didn't want to take my kids to it. I read some articles about some stuff that made it seem like there was like child grooming stuff that was like, how do you not know that you don't put this in a movie? Type elements related to a dog having its privates touched, and the way that they talk about it was like, this is the way that people groom children to molest them. This is not something you should put in a children's movie. And I don't know I don't know how someone couldn't acknowledge this while making it be like, oh, this is not a good joke to put in a kids movie. But so I wasn't going to go see that one for several different reasons, and so I haven't seen garbage like that. I haven't seen, and so you start running into I didn't really like Insidious 4, but worst of the year? No, it just wasn't a great movie. And then stuff like Deep Blue Sea 2, and then I just watched Escape Plan 2. Both terrible movies, but they're direct to video. So, worst of the year, here's 10 crappy movies released direct to video. That's not a very interesting list. So, I don't know if I'll have what my worst of the year list will be. Rich Review says, are you going to watch the reboot of Double Dare? Nope. I mean, I don't know what channel it's on. I don't have Nickelodeon. I don't have cable. I've never had cable. If we had it in our house, I'm sure my kids would watch it. I'm sure I'd put it on for them. But am I, as a grown man in my 30s, going to watch the same show about kids having slime dumped on their head that I watched when I was 10? Of course not. There's so many other TV shows. Like, if I'm going to watch something that I'm behind, we're going to watch a new show, I'll catch up on Walking Dead. I'll catch Game of Thrones or something else. But a nostalgia reboot show, they just don't normally appeal to me hardly at all. Whether it's The Nanny, Roseanne, any of these ones, they're just not the thing that I'm going to gravitate towards. And so much of most of what I watch is driven largely by what can I make content about it. Since I only have so much time, if I'm going to watch something, what can I watch that I also can make a video about it? And that creates a nice little filter for what I watch. And there's a few exceptions to that. I watched Westworld, but I haven't generated any content about it. I watched This Is Us, but I haven't generated any content about it. And I don't think I would ever generate stuff about This Is Us. I don't know what I would say about the show. I thought about doing Westworld, but at the end of the day, I was like, I like having a show that's kind of like this that I don't need to write notes, even though it's a show that you need to write notes to follow it. I just the idea of being able to just enjoy a show without needing to view it as homework. But for those shows I'm going to do that for, it's not going to be see your kids getting slime dumped on their head. V says, after watching your Marvel Netflix ranking, have gone back to Daredevil. It's definitely the best of the bunch. Yeah, the thing about Daredevil to me, that the two things that just pushed it into this other category is that the fight choreography for a TV show it's just on this other level. Because it's interesting, it's creative, it's very well choreographed, it's shot excellent, it's wide-angle shots, it's not a bunch of cuts in between it, and it's a TV show. And so what they've been able to do with the stunt work on the show shames most blockbusters. It's better fight choreography and shot better than the MCU movies with what they're able to do. And, there's different tastes and things like that, but what they were able to do with some of these long fight sequences in the hallways and things like that is a greater skill level than any hand-to-hand fights that we've seen in the MCU. They're special effects things. You don't want to compare those, but just hand-to-hand fighting, the stuff on Daredevil is better than what's in the rest of the MCU. So that's first thing that just puts it on this other level. But then there's all of these character scenes in dialogue that are just written so well that it's captivating. And we're just talking about life type things and just on this other level from what it should be for a show like that. Especially when I'm watching Daredevil side by side with Arrow, and I like Arrow. I haven't watched it from the beginning, but comparing the two side by side, the dialogue in these different shows, it's just night and day. The level of complexity of and one is aimed for teenagers, and so even factoring that in, there's still a lot of dumb stuff in the Arrowverse stuff, whereas Daredevil just was so good. So I'm fingers crossed season 3 is a return to form and not more of the not so good stuff that we've gotten recently from them. Nose is absolutely driving me nuts. V says, thought David Tennant was great in Jessica Jones, very unnerving. Woo. Now my nose is really going crazy on me. Yeah, he was so creepy. Just the performance and just the nature of the character and then the story arc. All of it is almost on this level of like, this is as creepy and unsettling of a character as you can get. The direction things kind of went of like, whoa, this is unnerving. So yeah, absolutely. And that's where I was disappointed that they couldn't find something to follow it up in season 2. I didn't feel like that it lived up to all that. Rich Review says, I might do a worse list, but say that no 10, though 2 are largely mediocre movies. Yeah, that's the same problem I'd have. Rich Reviews, I often struggle with television reviews. My Bosch Season 3 review got 1,400 views. Bosch 2 got 150 views. Bosch Season 4 got 70 views. YouTube's weird. It is so strange to figure out how many people are going to watch a given thing. Now, it's changed for me over the last 6 months. Now, so I've been doing YouTube. I'm 2 weeks away from 2 years on YouTube. Right at 2 weeks away. It's like July 17th or something like that is my 2-year anniversary on YouTube, with Sean Chandler Talks About. And my channel kind of functioned one way, and then the last 6 months it's changed quite a bit with the growth that I've had. But it was just so weird that like I put out, when my channel was brand new, a review of the Kickboxer reboot movie, and it got like 5,000, 6,000 views in 2 days or something, which was just crazy. Like at the time, just mind blowing that I got that many. Like, wow, how is this happening? And then when I reviewed the sequel when it came out a year and a half later, when my channel was much larger, and I reviewed it, and it got a fraction of the number of views. So just how YouTube works and how, kind of catch on to the algorithm and get recommendations and search engine optimization. With everything I've learned and everything I know, there's still a side to it that's just rolling the dice as to what's going to happen. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting. Is there anything TV-wise you would like to see redone? Anything TV-wise I'd like to see redone? Well, here's one this is a kind of an unfair answer to your question. But I think that Batman lends himself to television a lot more than movies because of the nature of the character. And so I'm using the 60s show as my mechanism to say this, but not doing the campiness of the 60s one. But because he's the great detective, because he's a human, it lends itself to week-to-week adventures. It lends itself to a mystery as well as week-to-week rogues gallery type stories. Whereas when they do like Supergirl, Supergirl is Supergirl, and she can fly and she's super strong. And so the threats for her have to be very powerful. And that's difficult to do on a TV show, 24 episodes a season or even 12 episodes a season. That's very difficult to come up with villains for her in that context. But a man that's a detective, that's a martial artist, that's pretty easy to do. So that's one that I've always thought, that Batman lends himself to television way more than Superman or Supergirl. And they keep giving us Superman and Supergirl TV shows. They had like live action for the last 25 years, or last 30 years, because Superboy came out 30 years ago. TV shows. I'm intrigued by, there's some rumors that there might be a new continuation of Star Trek The Next Generation with Picard coming back and this brain trust. I'm interested. You've got my attention. There's some things they could do with that could win me over. Especially if you do, I've always thought that like Riker, do like a Riker TV show. I think he always deserved to get to be the lead of something. And I don't know exactly what that would look like, but you could do some cool stuff with Riker as a, higher up at the Federation. Bringing back a TV show, I'd probably lend more towards like a reality TV show coming back than scripted television. Because scripted television, TV shows fit a time period really well. And then, the way we watch TV has changed so much. So I'd have to think through what's a TV show that would lend itself well to the way we binge watch TV shows now, would be the way I'd want to think about it. And I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know what show, if done now, would be improved with that. I don't have one that immediately comes to mind. So I don't have a good answer for you. Rich Review says, one of my shows that I watched, there's an ongoing debate on the forums on whether cannibalism happened. I don't know what you're referring to, but I'm sure someone has eaten another human at some point in time. He also recommends The Expanse and The 100, two shows I have not seen. I have heard of, but I have not seen. And then Rich Reviews says, do you do film requests? I used to, but I can't ever, I don't feel like I can follow through on them. And so I've, in the past, asked for requests, and then people have given me lists of them. And every single time I've asked for requests, I felt like I was disappointing people. Because they'll recommend movies that some of them I naturally gravitate towards, and so I do those ones. And then there's ones I don't naturally gravitate towards, and I don't end up reviewing them. And so I don't really take requests anymore. I've actually actively stopped taking requests because I don't want to disappoint people. And I don't want to tell someone, like, yeah, I'll may check that out, and then not do it, which I've done so many times. Actually, I've done that with you. Pretty sure I've told you 50 times I'm going to watch Saturday Night Fever, and I haven't watched it yet. It's still one of those ones that's on my mind, like, I need to watch Saturday Night Fever, but there's not a context where... There's not a lot of moments where I'm like, hey, I want to watch this 40-year-old movie about disco starring John Travolta. That's not a moment that I have frequently. And it's not something that, for my channel, if I were to watch it and review it, I would assume that that would be the lowest watched video that I put out that entire month. If I reviewed it, even hyped it up and everything, it would be the lowest reviewed thing that I did that month, because there's not a group of people right now that are my subscribers based off my previous content that would want to rush out to watch that. And so that's where I've backed out on doing requests, because I don't want to disappoint. I don't want to say I'm going to do something and not do it. I don't want to get requests and be like, oh, all right, how does this factor into my schedule and my strategies? And so my best option is probably move away from doing that sort of thing, because it just, there's so many things coming in, that new movies coming out that I'm behind on already, TV shows that I want to watch that I'm behind on, that adding in movies that are per request, I'm just going to disappoint people. So that's kind of the backstory on all of it. Rich Review says, do you think we could ever see a Deep Space Nine, Voyager, or Enterprise movies? No, I don't think it'll ever happen. If we didn't get a rebooted Next Generation movie, and they didn't do movies for those ones before, it's just not going to happen. The popular culture knows Kirk, Spock, McCoy. And even those Star Trek movies had dwindling returns at the box office, to which Star Trek Beyond might have even lost money. Like, there was a distinct drop in the box office with each one of those movies coming out, with them having these hot blockbuster directors working on them, with getting solid reviews. I mean, the internet likes to trash Into Darkness and things like that, but the reviews were solid from critics, and they were trying to attract a new audience. They were trying to move beyond just Star Trek fans, and Star Trek fans are the ones that are like, Into Darkness sucks! And still, there was dwindling box office returns with the characters that people talk about. So if they're like, hey, we're going to do a blockbuster movie called Deep Space Nine, they're like, is that something tied to Star Trek? People wouldn't know what it was. And so I just don't see it happening at all. They just don't have the saturation to the general public that the other ones have. And especially with Voyager doesn't even have a great reputation amongst Star Trek fans. Enterprise has a spottier, it's a little bit more intriguing, but it has its own issues with the Star Trek fan base. So I just don't see it happening ever. Apparently, there's He-Man and Logan's Run reboots in the works. They could be great. Hopefully, Logan's Run is a classic, so I hope they don't butcher it. Yeah, so He-Man has actually been in the works for 15 years. They've been trying to get things underway for a long, long time. And actually, Christian Harloff from Collider and Schmoes worked on it with one of the other guys there, and they were at the studio 10 years ago, and when one of these ones was going on, and so they have all sorts of thoughts on it and some interesting stories about the history on it. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, because it's a classic story of a movie being stuck in development hell, where there's a brand that everybody knows, if done right, this can make a lot of money. If it's released at the right time, this can make a lot of money. And then they keep trying to get it right, and then they move down a path, and then by the time they're almost ready to pull the trigger on it, things have changed enough, someone falls out, something doesn't work, and then they have to start over all over again. And they've been going through this process with it for 10 years. And then Logan's Run, another one that kind of has one of those great sci-fi ideas that's transferable. Like, how do you explore this idea in light of modern social issues that you could do something really cool with, but you got to do it right. Now, it's one that I don't think you need a gigantic budget to do it right. It doesn't have to be a $200 million blockbuster to tell that story. So you'd think they would get it right, get it done, but you know, it's Hollywood. Rich Review says, here's an idea: rank all the Netflix original movies. There's way too many. There's way too many of them, and no one's watched all of them. So that's the other problem with trying to do some of this ranking video ideas that are like, oh, that'd be fun. Like, but part of the appeal of the way I do my ranking videos is I design them and I select them based off of what have other people actually watched, and what do other people actually want to talk about. And so it's not just, I wonder what Sean's take on all these are. It's not, they're designed specifically for, here's my list, what's your list, let's talk about it. They're designed that way. So even when I did like my Star Wars villains one, I thought, hey, I've read a lot of the books. I've watched Rebels and Clone Wars. I could incorporate Thrawn and these other characters, but I want this to be a discussion that everyone can join in. And to do that, if I'm like, and then Asajj Ventress, and then Thrawn, and throwing all these characters in that people haven't, if they haven't watched a TV show they don't know about, I'm excluding people by doing that. So I actively try and select what I'm doing based off of what's an inclusive version of this video. What's an inclusive ranking that I can do that a bunch of us can talk about it. So if I'm going to do a Star Wars ranking, I'm probably going to base it around just the movies, because we've all seen all of the movies and we can talk about all the characters in the movies. But as soon as you're like, no, I'm including the books and I'm including these TV shows, every time you add one in, it shrinks down. It's a smaller group of people that's watched all of them. So I try and think through them in a way like that, to where they can be inclusive in the way that I design them to be. So Netflix original movies, I mean, there's hundreds of them probably by now. So in and of itself, I couldn't do it for that reason. But then no one has watched them. Like, no one else would. It would be me alone posting it. No one could post their rankings. We wouldn't have a conversation that we can have about it. So that's where I just wouldn't be able to do it. And it would be time. To do a top 10 Marvel Netflix movie, or it's not Marvel, to do a top 10 Netflix movies. That's 10 movies I have to watch. That's 20 hours to do that. And so I have to think, is this 20 hours the right 20 hours? Because I can do 20 hours. That's a lot of movie reviews. That's a lot of rankings. What's the one that's going to do best for 20 hours just to watch them? And then that many more hours to shoot the video, to make my list for the video, edit the video. And that's where I have to think through my time very much on which ideas I go with. Rich Reviews, what is your favorite movie that you've seen at the Alamo? My favorite Alamo Drafthouse experience was when Expendables 2 came out. They did something called Van Damage, because Jean-Claude Van Damme is in Expendables 2. And so they showed the movie like 4 or 5 days before it came out, wide release, and they did 4 Van Damme movies as the opening act for the movie. And they had interviews and stuff with some of the cast members from those movies. They had like competitions and stuff in front between the movies. And Van Damme did an introduction leading into a personalized introduction for that showing leading into Expendables 2. So that was my favorite experience. And I got dog tags too. Like, everyone that went to it got these dog tags for the event. So it was a very cool little deal that they did for when Expendables 2 came out. Rich Review says, do you think, and I'm going to close out. I'm going to go finish these questions right here, and then I'm going to head on out because we're at an hour now. Rich Reviews, do you think we could ever see a Mask reboot? Do you mean the 80s cartoon or the Jim Carrey movie? 80s cartoon, I don't think so, because it's not part of the popular culture. No. The Jim Carrey movie, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a reboot of Jim Carrey's The Mask. That's the point of reference. It comes from other source material, but I think it's very likely that we would see The Mask return in some format again. It seems like something that just is ripe for being remade. Rich Reviews, how would you pitch a Captain Planet movie? I would pitch Captain Planet movie as a satirical take on it. It would, I would pitch it as we're going to do 21 Jump Street with Captain Planet. Because if you try and do a straight version of Captain Planet, you're a crazy person. I mean, it's a movie or a TV show that's just so infused with like an overt environmentalist perspective on things that it's just so straight-faced with Captain Planet and, with a different environment or different rings with these powers. Heart. It's just so ripe to make fun of itself and not do a self-serious take on it. So you do a version that tries to be like a love letter to the original while totally poking fun at it and having fun with the ridiculous of the entire thing. That's the direction that you go with the Captain Planet reboot. Rich Reviews, what is your favorite sci-fi TV series that isn't Star Trek? Sci-fi TV series that isn't Star Trek. Firefly was great. Only got one season of it. There's one that they only ran a little bit. That we had my wife and this Ascension. Ascension was a sci-fi series from 4 or 5 years ago. We dug that one. It only ran for 4 or 5, 6 episodes, like a mini season on Sci-Fi. I would say Battlestar Galactica, but I've never finished Battlestar Galactica, so it's not a good answer to give. Sci-fi series. I don't. Those are the ones that immediately came to mind when you mentioned it. But something like X-Files really falls into sci-fi. So X-Files. Yeah. So those are ones that come to mind. And closing things out, Rich Reviews asks, have you seen the show Supernatural? I have seen the first 3 seasons of Supernatural. My wife and I started binge watching it right when our son was born, and this was a terrible idea because my wife doesn't normally like scary things, doesn't like things about death, and part of the premise of Supernatural is a mother dying and babies being around. Bad mix. And so I don't even know how she got through 3 seasons with me, but we dug it. Like, we enjoyed it while we were watching it. I didn't love it enough to be like, I'm going to keep watching this without her. But we dug it while we were watching it, had fun with it. But, it just didn't turn into one that we were going to watch through. And we were so far behind on it. And when it's a 13 season, so by the time we started watching it was like season 8 or 9. And there's a side to it we just kind of go, I'm not even going to try to catch up on this when, there's that much to a show. So anyway, there you have it. I'm at like 57 minutes now. Thank you guys so much for watching, subscribing, all that fun stuff. If you guys didn't notice, I'm working on radically changing my Patreon page and perks and everything like that to better match what I can actually deliver on to something I talked about before, but I hate disappointing people. So if you want to check out the perks on there, they're changed, and I'm adjusting things and trying to line things up a little bit better to deliver quality to you guys that I actually can follow through on, and have a couple new perks for some of those higher categories. So I think right now, if you are at $25, you can talk with me like a one-on-one discussion via Skype that's 30 minutes long in a month, something like that. So I tried to work a few different things in there. So I don't know if you want to check that out. And I'm trying to rebrand it, so I'm not just saying check out my Patreon page, but Sean Chandler Plus, which is a little bit more personable, describes what it's trying to be, which is kind of a membership site as opposed to, hey, if you want to just give me money. I don't want this to be that. I actually want to deliver value and have things that I'm offering, and so it's more of I'm using it as a tool for a membership site as opposed to just a place to send me money. So there you have it. There's kind of our weekly hangout. I should be back next week, and so we can talk movies and TV shows, and probably this week I'll kind of update all that stuff on Patreon page and make a video specifically about how I'm changing those things. So thank you for watching.